So today's YouTube, I'm going to cover how to set up an AWS Connect instance with a certain scenario. And the scenario we're going to use today is setting up an AWS Connect contact center for emergency response and natural disasters. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through all of the steps required for configuring a contact center to handle calls coming in regarding natural disaster or emergency response. Okay, so the first step in this process will be in creating the queues, natural disaster queue and emergency response queue, which we're going to do. Uh, Second step is going to be configuring the routing profiles. So the routing profiles, I guess I should just take a step back actually. So the queues, what those actually accomplish is when calls are coming into the main number, which is provided by AWS Connect, the queues are going to be how the customer calls are waiting. So the queues are where the calls are waiting, basically to be serviced by one particular group of agents or another. Okay, so that's basically what a queues is. It's a waiting room. Okay, so after the queues, we're going to configure the routing profiles. So the routing profiles are once they're configured, they tell us um, which agents get which types of calls, basically. Okay, so that's how we're going to address that today. We're going to create routing profiles with two users. And one user is going to be assigned to the natural disaster queue, and the other one's going to be assigned to the emergency response queue. So the contact flows, what those are, um, it's basically the A to Z flow of the call. Okay, so it encompasses the queues, also the routing profiles. We're going to be using a visual tool that actually sets that up. So it literally allows us to define how a call will be routed throughout the IVR, and once someone calls in and once they disconnect. We're going to also be setting up the business hours because the business hours play a role in the queue when configuring the queue. And if a call comes in outside of business hours, we can define certain actions that take place, such as the caller gets a specific type of prompts when they call in outside of the queue or outside of the business hours. So we're going to be designing both of these users to address each type of queue. Very minimal, but this could be expanded. I just wanted to get this up and running this morning. All right, and so those are basically all the steps we're going to get involved in. So the first things first, let's go over here to our dashboard. And so I did use ChatGPT to get a nice little blueprint of how we can configure this particular type of setup for emergency response and natural disasters. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create the users first. Okay, so kind of had this a little bit out the order. So let's see here. Let's create these users. Okay, so in order to configure the users, we want to go to the user management section. So we have an admin. I'm going to add a new user. All right, so let me get these users here. So his first username is going to be John Natural Disaster. Just makes it all consistent. So let's do this. Okay, let's go ahead and call him this. We're going to set up his email. I like to copy paste, first of all, let you know that I'm, prepared for this. Second of all, it's just more convenient. It's quicker and it looks nicer. All right, so let's see that. All right, so give a password. So whenever we create a user, we also have to set a security profile and a routing profile, um, which we'll do here in a moment. So security profile, I'm going to call this guy an agent. Right now, we're just going to set a basic routing profile, but we're going to come back and we're going to update this routing profile accordingly. I just want to get the user creation um, out of the way first. All right, so we have John configured. Okay, so now let's configure the second user. Let's see here. All right, so we want to get Sarah here. Add a new user. Login. Email. Country code. She's Canadian. And let's do this to give her a bogus number. And let's get her password here. Get a security profile and basic routing profile. I'm actually gonna write myself a note. I gotta go back here and change these routing profiles. Okay. So we're gonna she's gonna get a soft phone here, and yep. So it's the same process we did with John. So we're gonna save this user, and now we're good to go. All right. So the next step, basically in our workflow here. Let's just go back here. In this, we want to set up the queues. Okay. So the queues are going to be the holding areas for calls that are coming in to speak with agents. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have two queues. So queues are going to be configured through the routing menu. So let's do that right now. So let's add a queue. This first queue is going to be the natural disaster queue. Let's see if I have a definition in there. Yep. So we have a queue for handling natural disasters, of course. The hours of operation. We need to set that later, but right now we'll just do like basic hours. Okay. Okay, so let's do this. Actually, so I'm sorry. Let me just create the hours of operation first because some of this requires that some of these configurations just make the presentation a little bit better. So let me just go and create the hours of operation first here. Add new hours. Uh, I'm just gonna call this maybe this time zone. Both of these are gonna be 24 hours, but I just want to be able to, have options later on when we selecting this through the drop downs, which you'll see in a moment. Uh, Natural hours. All right, so we'll just do U.S. Central, U.S. Central. All right, yeah, so we'll still do it all 24 hours. So that's what this means. So selecting all of those values. So we'll save it. I need a description. Let's see. Save it. Okay, great. So we save that. So let's just create a new one. Let's just do the natural disaster or emergency response. Same deal. Okay, so now let's just take a look at the business hours here, hours of operation, emergency response. Okay, maybe it didn't save my new ones. Okay, let me see. Natural disaster hours. Let's do it like that. Okay, we'll save that. And we'll check that it's there. Okay, so emergency response hours and natural disaster hours. So we haven't assigned them to a queue yet, so that's fine. Um, so let's just actually make those queues, and then we're gonna go back and just adjust those, um, place those queues or associate those queues with each agent. So let's go ahead and create those queues first. Because the queues also have to be associated with some business hours. So that's why I wanted to make that step. So first, let's configure the queues. So natural disaster queue. Yep. Hours of operation. See, there we go. So natural disaster hours, which is 24 hours, but we want to again, drive home the point that we can associate those business hours to a queue, so that if anyone calls outside those hours, they would, we can use logic to route them to a message maybe that says, hey, operating hours or from you know 8 to 8. So, all right. So I don't think we need to have anything else here. So we just need to define the queue. So we define that queue. Let's refresh it. So we have the natural disaster queue. Let's add another queue, emergency response queue. Do that. So emergency response hours, we want to configure that there. And we want to save. Now let's go back to those users real quick because we have to associate a user with the queues. So we have John Natural Disaster. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's going to be the routing profile. So let's actually just create the routing profile, and then I'm sorry, we'll go back and do the queues. So um, so let's do the routing profiles. Routing profile. Routing profiles. So we'll add a routing profile. So the routing profile, that again is going to define how calls that are entering the call center are routed from the queue to the agent. So the routing profile dictates how what dictates which calls from which queue are routed to our agents. So this is a natural disaster routing profile. Okay. We want to give that voice. We can also give it chat, but we'll just stick with voice for right now. All right, the queue that we want to associate it with. So this is again, this is the natural disaster profile. We want to associate it with a natural disaster queue. All right, so that's all well and good. And this is going to be, so the outbound queue, this is going to be this, I think this is natural disaster queue. So do it like that. Okay, so that's all consistent. Now, routing profile with the matching queue. So let's save that. Let's refresh. So we have that natural disaster profile. All right, let's add the emergency response profile, which is going to be associated with the emergency response queue. Okay, we want to make that routing profile handle voice chats. Let's see here. Let's leave that setting there. And we want to have this routing profile emergency response queue, and an emergency response queue. So that's there. Okay. So I mean, so all of the agents are assigned to. So actually, this is kind of a good thing to show. So we can watch this change. So as we go through and assign each routing profile to an agent. So right now, the natural disaster has 0 agents assigned, and the disaster recovery. Let me just refresh this. Right. So the emergency response has 0, and the natural response has 0 agents assigned. Let's change that. So John Natural Disaster. Let's get the routing profile. Natural disaster profile. Okay. Again, the profile defines which group of callers this agent can handle. Okay. So it basically ties an agent to a queue. All right. So that's basically what it does. So John is assigned to that profile, and Sarah, we're going to assign her to the emergency response profile. Save that. Now if we go back to routing profiles, so now they've each been assigned. So the natural disaster has Sarah, and so each profile has an assigned agent. So that's good. So now let's create the contact flows. This is probably the best, the most interesting part. So the contact flows. So the first contact flow we're gonna create. Let me see if I have another. Yep. So I created a main. So I'm going to create this one called the main contact flow. Okay. So this is going to be the flow that a caller enters after being in the queue, and it's going to be basically be able to branch off or direct the calls to another contact flow, which we're going to see in a moment. But right now, this is the umbrella, the master contact flow, the main contact flow. All right, and in order to set this up, the first thing we want to do is we want to set up our blocks. So the first thing that we want to do is maybe just give a welcome prompt. Okay, when someone enters this particular queue. Okay, so whenever someone calls the main number, which in this case is going to be a toll-free number, which AWS Connect provides us. This is where someone like me gets to define how all of that is routed. So in the play prompt, let's just see the text response. He's going to say welcome. So I have a little blurb here. There we go. So, welcome. Okay. Oh, don't go that way. Copy. So Amazon Connects by default is using Amazon Lex. So that's Amazon Lex provides text to speech services, and it also is what's used for the Amazon Lex service, the chatbots. So right out of the box, we get that integration. So whenever we call this main number, which we're going to hear in a minute, welcome to the Emergency Response Center. Okay, so we can say that. We can also just say, let's see if we have something maybe like a main block, main disaster block. We don't need it. We can define that later. We'll just continue. So we can save this. So we also need to be connecting these as we go. So as a call enters here, the first thing they're going to do is hit this prompt. All right. The second thing we want to do is we want to get, so after we get a prompt, we say welcome. We want to get the customer input. Okay. So this is where we start being able to, collect or find out the reason why the customer is calling. Okay. So first things first, let's go ahead and connect these two. And then we want to enter a text to speech, prompt. So we want to be able to say, for natural disaster assistance, press 1. For general emergency, press 2. Okay, and we can just save that. Before we save it, we can add conditions here. So condition 1 and add condition 2. So that's 2. So we have 2 options that are going to branch out here. Okay, so somebody press 1 and then somebody press 2. Now before we do that, let me just kind of go ahead and just modify this this prompt here. I'm going to add a little bit more text, just so I actually want to hear what the the Lex voice sounds like whenever we use this. Right. So this text to speech Lex is going to say all this. So that's where the natural language processing, and just again, this the text to speech comes in. So we have that whole dialogue there. Now, after we got the initial prompt, the welcome, we capture the customer's input. And we have this. So now the next thing we want to do is set the natural disaster flow. So we want to get the transfer to flow options here. So if they select 1, let's say that's going to be the natural, we want to transfer them to the natural disaster flow. And if they press 2, we're going to transfer them to the emergency response flow. So let's just go ahead and get that. Get these flow. There we go. Natural disaster flow. Let's call that a natural disaster. So we want to set that natural disaster. So we want to set the. Oh, I think. Wait, natural disaster. Oh, so okay, so we want to transfer to a flow. I haven't created the flows yet for those, so for right now, we're just gonna leave these there. But I just want to at least let me just set the names for them. So natural disaster flow. Yep. So again, right now we're setting up the main flow. Okay, and after I set this up, then we're gonna go back and then we're gonna set up the natural disaster and emergency response flows respectively. So we're still building here. So that's the natural disaster flow. Let's get the emergency response flow. At least define the block so we know what to, how the flow is working here. Okay, so right now we don't want to, we just want to save it. So we don't have anything selected right there. All right. And now let's add like a disconnect. So basically, this is like the disconnect point for everything. So everything, all the errors and whatnot, we're just gonna point it here. So because that's just this is just a demonstration. But all of these points need to be associated. So let's do that. I think that looks good. All right, so let's do this here. Termination. All right, so I want to just let us save real quick. Yep, okay, it'll let us save, at least for now. That's good. So right now it's still saved. So call comes in, we hit them with the prompt. Just a hello, standard hello. Then we get their input, 1 or 2. Matter of fact, let me make sure I'm actually for 1. For 1 natural disaster, 2 emergency response. Okay. Yep. So we have all that there. All right. So now let's just configure the. Let's configure both of the flows for emergency response and then natural disaster. And then we're gonna wire all this up, and then we're gonna make a phone call and hear it out. So we're almost there. So let's go to flow. Let's go and make this emergency response flow. Or let's do the natural disaster flow. Create flow. Natural disaster flow. Now for the natural disaster flow, the first thing we want to do is we want to set the working queue. So that basically says, okay, whenever this flow is invoked, what queue are we getting? What queue is associated with this flow? So we want to set the working queue. I may have missed it. Set working queue. Set working queue. Specify the queue that the contact will be transferred to. So that's the main piece. It's the front door. So we want to associate that here. So set working queue. All right, so once we define, okay, so let's set the queue here. So edit. This is a natural disaster. And let's set the queue. This is a natural disaster queue. So that's the queue is, again, that's where customers are waiting. So this customer would have pressed 1 to be placed inside of the natural disaster queue. And when the agent is ready, we're going to be able to route them there to the agent that's serving the natural disaster queue. So that's what this is. So we define that queue. Next thing we want to do is we want to transfer to the queue. So that's going to be under the terminate block. So we just want to transfer to the transfer to queue. Ends the current flow and transfer the contact to a queue. All right, so this basically transfers it to agent, basically. So we're going to see that here in a second. And then we want to, after that call is done. So again, once a call is inside of a queue, once an agent is ready, so we already assigned that, defined which agents are servicing each queue in the routing profile. So it makes sense. So once we transfer this to the queue, once a call is inside the queue, depending on the agent's availability, as soon as they go available, they are automatically going to be getting a call that's in the queue. That's their job. So, so the last step in this little block is we just want to terminate, disconnect the call. So after the business is handled, we just want to terminate. So everything else goes here to terminate. Okay, so this should be correct. So let's just go ahead and save this. We know it's correct if we can publish it. Publish flow successfully. Now let's go to the next flow. Let's create a flow for emergency response. Okay, emergency response flow. Emergency response flow. Same process, just to make this demo just concise. First things first, we want to set that working queue. Set the working queue. Okay. The working queue. This one's going to be emergency response. So let's get that here. Let's just call it emergency response. This it's emergency response queue. Click save. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to transfer it to queue. So let's not forget to tie all these lines together. Clean up as you go. So we got that there. Next thing we want to do is again we want to. So the option that we want is going to be in terminate. So in terminate, that's going to allow us to choose a block that allows us to transfer to the queue that an agent will be serving. So transfer to queue. So when we do transfer to queue, let's see what kind of settings. Yeah, we don't need to. Yeah, so that's already good. So transfer to queue. And then after that, we can just go to disconnect. And we just, we can just go ahead. So we have other options to handle errors or whatnot. There's way other, all these different types of blocks over here, all kinds of logic or whatnot. So right now, I'm still kind of working on that. But right now for this demo, we're just setting up just very basic usage here. Disconnect. So actually, there's one check we can actually put in. So here's a check. Since we've already go ahead and configure that, we can actually check the hours of operation. So before we do this, let's just go ahead and do an hours of operations check. So I'm not gonna put it in there because I haven't defined it, but that's basically what we can do. So we can just see if I can delete that. There we go. So, but that's another thing we can do. We can just also perform a check to see if those hours are for the queue are open. So we can save that. Let's see if we can publish it. Okay, why? So again, the only reason that this didn't work is because we also have to make sure we have all of these, all of the gates here, all of the conditions need to be met with some logic. Okay, so let's save it again. Saved. Let's publish it. Flow published successfully because we have everything connected. Now let's go back to the main flow. main disaster emergency flow. And let's go ahead and wire these last two things up here. All right, so transfer to flow. All right, so we already set the flow. So what flow do we want to set? So this is natural disaster. We want to get the natural disaster flow. Save. All right, and now we want to configure the emergency response flow. Emergency response flow. Save. Okay, so that should be it for the configuration here. We'll publish it. Let's see if that's good to go. Failed to publish. What did I miss? Oh, so again, we want to be, that's what I say, clean as you go. So we just want to associate this error message with a, so if there's a failure, we just want to just go ahead and disconnect the call. That's what that's doing. Save and publish. Published successfully. All right, now that we have that's published successfully, we just want to hook it all up to the phone number. So let's go to the dashboard, or let's go to the main page here. View the phone numbers. This is our phone number there, and I want to set that up with the main disaster emergency flow. All right, let's want to call it main disaster emergency contact. Let's do that. Save that. And let's just give it a call. Hopefully you can hear this. I'm going to try to put it on speaker. And actually we can do it a little bit better. Let me actually just kind of log into control panel before I do that. I want to log in as a user. So in order to do that, I got to go to the alias. So it's instances, alias, the access URL. I'm going to sign in as one of my users, I guess. No, it's not that. Oh, let me log out first. Sorry. Let me log out. Yeah, I was logged in. So let's go ahead and try to log in as one of those users here with the password that I set up earlier. All right, so let's just log in as John. That was his password here. We'll log in as John. That's his password. John's username. I think his username was this, John Natural Disaster. Oh, contact. So he can't see. So what we're trying to do is just he can't see the he's not an admin, so he can't see the dashboard. So that's completely fine. What I wanted to access was this control panel. So I want to set him available. And yep. So all right. So John is natural disaster. Let's see what happens here. So John's available. Let me call this number.
Center. We are here to assist you in times of need. Your safety and well-being are our top priorities, and we are ready to provide the help you need. For natural disaster assistance, please press 1. For general emergency response, please Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to
So
us
there it is.
and will be answered in the order it was received. Natural disaster queue.
Hey, this is Elliot. All right. Let me end the call. All right. So again, that was a brief overview of. Let me close the content. So it'll be the same with the emergency response. I don't want this video to go too long because it's hard to like upload to YouTube and all that stuff. So that was really the flow here. Yeah, let me know in the comments, what questions you have, and do my best to answer those. And we will have more detailed demos coming forward. But I just wanted to get this one out of the way. So thank y'all very much for watching, and have a blessed day.